The 3.8-liter V6 Mustang has 193 horsepower and 225 pound-feet of torque from the factory. The bottom end is actually pretty stout, but the top end is known to have issues. The engines tend to develop a ticking sound from bent push rods or dead lifters. Because this car is going to spend a lot of time at or near the red line, it's crucial to any 3.8 Autocross build that you take the weakest link out of the equation, the factory rockers. While fine for daily driving, the factory fulcrum-mounted rockers aren't meant for prolonged periods at high RPMs. Harland Sharp makes several different roller rockers for the 3.8-liter Mustang. The best bolt-on option for this project is their 1.8:1 ratio non-adjustable pedestal mount kit. In addition to being much stronger than the stock pieces, they have roller bearings and roller tips, which means less friction in the valve train. And because they're a higher ratio than stock, they hold the valves open farther and longer, allowing you to make more power throughout the RPM range. These roller rockers are the heart of the engine mods on this project. If you plan on autocrossing a V6 Mustang, they should be your first engine bolt-on. Auto Specialties Performance makes this underdrive pulley for the 99-04 Mustang V6. The smaller diameter compared to the stock pulley adds horsepower and torque by reducing the parasitic drag of your accessories, but not so much that it affects battery charging, power steering feel, or the performance of your air conditioning. K&N makes very good cold air kits. They add a little horsepower and torque, but they mostly help with throttle response. I chose this kit because it doesn't require a tune. In fact, none of the engine mods I'm doing require tuning. Part of what I want to show people with this car is that simple bolt-ons actually make these little motors much better. Another easy bolt-on is this BBK 65mm throttle body. The larger diameter allows more air into the motor, working in concert with the cold air kit. It will give you a little bump in horsepower, but what you'll really notice is an increase in throttle response. I've gotten more air into the engine, now it's time to get that air out. JBA makes a really nice set of stainless steel headers for the New Edge V6s. They have 1.5" primaries and 3/8" thick flanges. They improve flow over the stock units, adding a little horsepower and torque throughout the RPM range. Like the mods on the intake side, they will improve throttle response. Why didn't I go with long tube headers? Because they cost you some low-end torque, and I need all the low-end torque I can get. Trubendz makes a dual exhaust conversion for the 99-04 V6s. It's a 2.5" aluminized X-pipe with catalytic converters. When combined with a V8 dual exhaust system, you'll get a good seat-of-the-pants improvement and much sharper throttle response. For this project, I chose Flowmaster's stainless steel American Thunder kit for the 99-04 Cobras. Getting the 3.8 to breathe better will add more horsepower and torque, and so will reducing drag with an underdrive pulley. How much? Well, I know this might sound crazy, but it doesn't really matter. Almost every car I race against in Cam C has 300 to over 500 horsepower, but none of them can get all that power to the ground. Autocrossing is not a horsepower game. The biggest reason for installing the roller rockers, underdrive pulley, cold air kit, throttle body, headers, X-pipe, and catback exhaust is throttle response. Crisp, quick throttle response means precise control of the power I'm getting to the ground, and this car is going to get every last bit of its power to the ground. What I'm really looking for out of these mods is a car that reacts immediately to any input from my right foot. The Harland Sharp roller rockers are a true bolt-on. They don't come with instructions, but the install is straightforward. All you need to do is get the number 1 cylinder to top dead center before you start. Soak the roller rockers in break-in oil for a few hours and make sure to use Moly Lube anywhere metal touches metal. Torque them down to 22 foot-pounds and you're done. It's actually harder to get the throttle body and valve covers off than it is to bolt the roller rockers in place. You should replace the throttle body and valve cover gaskets when everything goes back together. It's also a good idea to replace all of your push rods. I found 4 bent push rods even though my motor wasn't ticking. Once installed, the roller rockers will be a little louder than the stock parts. The valve train will sound a bit like a sewing machine. If anything sounds like metal on metal, you have an issue. The roller rocker install takes about 5 hours. The ASP Underdrive Pulley comes with simple instructions. You will need special tools to remove the factory pulley and install the new one, but you can rent them from your local auto parts store. You should also replace your crankshaft seal during the install. The ASP pulley does require a shorter fan belt. The pulley install takes about 2 hours. The K&N Cold Air Kit comes with very detailed instructions. It's a simple hour-and-a-half install. The BBK throttle body is an easy swap. The instructions are clear and concise. You will have to remove some studs from the factory intake, so a stud removal socket would help, but it's not required. A common problem is the cruise control cable holding the throttle open at idle. To fix this, simply cut and weld the bracket together to correctly position the cruise control cable. Without the bracket issue, it takes less than an hour to install the throttle body. The JBA headers are really well made and they come with great instructions. They are, however, a challenging install. You will need to remove the EGR tube, the dipstick, and the factory header studs. There's not a lot of room to work and getting access to the bolts is a little tough. I highly recommend using Stage 8 locking header bolts, but be warned, getting the C-clips on the Stage 8 bolts is no easy feat. You will need a lot of patience for the install, but once you have the bolts tight and the retainers and C-clips in place, they will never come loose. It took me a long, frustrating 7 hours to get the headers and Stage 8 locking bolts installed. The Trubendz X-Pipe has better quality and design than other X-Pipes available for the 99 to 04 Mustangs despite not being made from stainless steel. It doesn't come with instructions, but it's a very simple install. You will need to extend your O2 sensor cables. Plan on spending about an hour and a half getting the X-Pipe in. Exhaust is a very personal choice. The Flowmaster American Thunder kit for the 99 to 04 Cobras in stainless steel makes the V6 sound a bit more throaty than some of the other kits that end up being raspy at high RPMs. The car sounds almost like a V8 at idle, and at redline it sounds like a swarm of angry bees. You will have to source a second pair of exhaust hangers and cut your bumper to allow for the exhaust tips. You can also swap out to a GT or Cobra rear bumper. All in, the exhaust install and cutting the bumper takes about 3 hours. I know I said the horsepower numbers don't matter, and they really don't matter to me, but they might matter to some of you. So if you search the internet and the Mustang forums for numbers on these mods, you'll find that people claim anywhere from 8 to 12 horsepower per part. That would mean gains of 56 to 84 horsepower. Based on my experience, those numbers are completely unrealistic. My 2000 GT has a dyno-proven 290 horsepower and the V6 doesn't feel nearly as strong, but it does feel as powerful as a stock 5-liter Fox body Mustang. So I'd say it's realistic to assume I've added about 25 horsepower to the car. But what is infinitely more tangible is the throttle response. Before the mods, the car was sluggish, slightly sporty, but nothing special. It would send me back into my seat a bit if I floored it, but I never really felt like I was in anything but a car that looked the part but couldn't act it. But these mods make the car come alive. Pressing the gas pedal now sends an order instead of filing a request. The power, though not overwhelming, is right there for me, immediate, eager to let me know my ponies are freer than before. It launches harder and the power is more consistent from 2000 RPM to the red line. And best of all, it feels like it's extending less effort to make power in the upper RPMs, exactly where it's going to live on course. On the street, that seat-of-the-pants feel is evident in first, second, third, and even fourth gear, but once you're into fifth, you're below 2000 RPM and the car feels only slightly more powerful than stock. But for autocrossing, I'm only worried about how it feels in first and second gear. And it feels like my competition is in for a big surprise.